Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for the invitation and nice introduction. In my everyday work, I focus on migrants, on initiatives how to integrate into society so that their life is better and so that we can use their potential, so to treat them as a chance to better development than a risk or a danger. But today I will focus on the second part of my interests. Those are the cities, its problems, how do they develop. But because the topic of the workshop is about identity, I will focus on identity, how different processes are changing its identity, how we can make it stronger, how we can make it, what are the processes which make it weaker. So here you have a nice photo of some very small city in Poland, which for sure takes care about its cultural heritage, which for sure is deeply rooted in its history. But I also will show you some examples of cities which have forget about its identity and about the processes which make it easy to forget. But let's start from explaining why we can say about the identity in connection with a city. So I will talk about two different kinds of identity. First, it's the so-called territorial identity. So it's how do we feel about some particular city, if we have some emotional bonds with it, if we are proud of the cultural landscape, if we feel connected to our neighborhood, to the local community, if we can say that this community exists still. So it's about our personal identity. And to the territorial identity, there are two nice concepts of so-called metropolitan elites and ordinary people. So if it comes to the metropolitan elites, as you can see on picture, those are just some pictures from internet, so just to visualize what I'm talking about. Metropolitan elites, those are very well educated people, highly qualified, usually working in transnational corporations, so earning a lot and traveling a lot. But because of such type of life, they don't really feel the connection to the place they live, because nowadays they live in Warsaw, then they are traveling to Paris, and they are surrounded by similar people. They are living and working in similar hotels and similar office buildings. On the other hand, we have ordinary people, the middle class, the lower class, the people who live for a long time in one place. They can be qualified, they can be unqualified, they can be educated or not, but they feel some connection to the city where do they live. And this is like the bigger group of people than the metropolitan elites. I also mentioned the term local community. I also asked the question if we still can talk about the local community. So it's the neighborhood. The local community, those are people that surround us, they live next to us, and we feel some connections with them. We know them, we talk to them, we spend time with them. So the question is, if we can talk about the local community, and when can we talk about them? Because if we live in a small city, then the answer to this question is a little bit easier. But if we live in a big metropolis like Warsaw or Paris or Barcelona, then it's getting more complicated because there is more people who are traveling a lot, either from abroad, either those are migrants, undocumented or documented, highly qualified or not, but a lot of people are traveling from abroad. But also we have the process of urbanization. The small cities, the medium-sized cities, they are shrinking across the whole Europe. Young people don't want to stay in small and medium-sized cities. They are traveling to metropolises, but because of that, they don't feel so strong connection to the territory where do they live. They live in the big block of flats. It's very often gated communities. like very modern and elegant, but without any spirit, without any connection to the local history. And then we have the second term I wanted to say, it's the urban identity. And this is about the city. Of course, those two concepts, they are connected because people live in a city and they can have this territorial identity because the city has a strong urban identity. But it's more about the city, about its history, about what's specific about some particular city, and if the local politics, local authorities, they take actions to make it stronger, or maybe they take some decisions that make this identity weaker. And here we have some nice examples of places that makes the local identity stronger. So those are the places where people can meet, where they spend time, where they build the social ties. So this is the tapas bar in Spain and some local grocery in Italy. This is a place where people know each other. They can meet, they can talk, in contrary to some supermarket or in contrary to Starbucks, for example, where nobody knows each other. I also mentioned two very inspiring books. It's the first one, it's The Great Good Place, about third places. So the inspiring places where there is this atmosphere, there is this genius loci. But what's important about third places, it's that they are not posh, they are not expensive, they are just for normal people to come there, to spend their time, to meet with neighbors and friends, but in very like common atmosphere without all this metropolitan flash, let's say. And the second concept, it's called non-places. I think some of you can find it very inspiring. For me it was, those two books. Non-places, those are the supermarkets, airports, the office buildings that they are completely not connected to the history and to the space where they are located. They are the same all around the world so that people cannot feel any ties with those places because they don't have the spirit. And here are some examples of non-places, of processes that are changing our cities. So the buildings, the spaces that are without any spirits, they are the same all around, at least Europe. And also, where do we live? How does it look like? Where do we work? What's destroying the local identity, what's destroying this atmosphere in a city, those can be also the outdoor advertisements, especially if they are located in historical centers, in the city centers. So it should be, it's so-called the heart of the city. It should build the local identity, it should build the connections to the city, and also those are the places where people should like to meet. But if we have so many advertisements, it's very hard to find the spirit and to feel the history and the atmosphere of a place. I don't know how is it in your countries. In Poland we have big problem to fight with such advertisements. So some legal solutions were introduced, but it's a law, but it doesn't work at all. It's very difficult to introduce it. So there is many cases in courts that the local authorities and the companies, they fight about those advertisements. And then you could ask, why do I think that restaurants, they have something in common, why they are destroying the identity of a city? And here I gave the photo from Hell. It's a very nice city with a lot of historical buildings, but when you are walking along the street, you cannot notice this atmosphere, you cannot notice that there are nice buildings, because you just see tents like that. And this is like the, not so easy, because on the one hand we can meet in restaurants and we can build social ties, but on the other hand if you let the companies do such things, then you destroy the city, you destroy its atmosphere because you cannot see that it's an old city with some specific architecture. Here, other processes that can strengthen the local identity or destroy it. The first, the Pontevedra, its example, later I will ask, maybe there are some Spanish students, but it's a city in Galicia where there are no cars. It's a city for pedestrians. So people can go around, they can enjoy, they can meet with each other, they can build some social relations. When the local authorities decided, take the decision that there will be no cars in the city, people were a little bit anxious, but after some time, they decided it was a good direction of changes. On the other hand, we have example of the American city, some American city, not a particular one, but they are built for cars. So people live in the suburbs. They live like there is a lot of houses that are similar one to another, and they are like addicted to cars. They have to use them because this is how those cities are designed. So they cannot feel the atmosphere of a place. They don't have time to spend with other people because they spend so much time with a car. So this is like the social effect of suburbanization, the very bad effect, one of many bad effects. And here I'll also put some title of very inspiring lecture. It's Life Between Buildings. Jan Gehl, he's a very famous Dutch architect, but he also was studying psychology, and he connected how we can build our city to influence the people, to influence the social relations. It's like very, very famous book. Here we have examples of some actions that were undertaken by local authorities, and their intention was good. They wanted to improve something, and they were saying they are trying to bring the historical spirit back, but something went wrong. So in place of some green, nice areas on market squares, we have just the concrete. We could say a lot about urban regeneration in Poland and what went wrong, but this is the example of some activity that was supposed to achieve some aim, but their effect was the opposite. And those are two examples, but we could say about many, many more. Here is an example of so-called unwanted cultural heritage, because when we say the word cultural heritage, we usually think about some palaces, some nice churches, about tourism and people coming to see this cultural heritage, something which we value positively. But there is a lot of heritage that we don't want. And this is the example of very nice wooden houses in one of the big cities in Poland. And this was the whole district of such houses. But because inhabitants in Białystok, they mostly came from villages, they didn't see anything valuable in cottage houses in the middle of the city. And also the local authorities didn't perceive these houses as something valuable. Because of that, nobody was investing into those houses, or even intentionally they were destroyed. And in place of them, such modern, nice block of flats were built. This is what happens if people don't don't want some cultural heritage, don't understand. Of course, there were some architects and some people who wanted to protect these wooden houses, but they were not very successful. Here is another example of problematic heritage. The first one is the Palace of Culture and Science. From time to time there is a discussion that because of its history, because it's a symbol of the Russian domination in Poland, maybe we should destroy it, because it's very difficult to destroy it. It's still there, but such discussions appeared because of the history of this building. So on the one hand, it's a very valuable piece of architectural art, but on the other hand, because of its history that the connotations are not so obvious for Polish people, sometimes such ideas to destroy it appear. The other example is train station in Katowice. It was built in the brutalism style, so like a lot of concrete, and it was not very nice building, but it was sometime in architecture, and experts in architectures, they value this style because it's something that proves about the history of architectural thinking. It was also destroyed. It was destroyed and then built from something that was similar to the original version, but people didn't want it because they don't like the brutalism style. Then we have other example of the sculpture that brings to mind the Soviet times in Poland. I know that in all countries such discussions are undertaken. Some French student once told me that in France there is the discussion that there is a lot of sculpture of white men who discovered something, so maybe it's time to destroy all those white men and maybe introduce something new, because we have new era and also there are women, there are migrants, so why everywhere the white men should be put it. And then finally we have the ruins of a factory in Łódź. So because it was industrial city, there is a lot of ruins of factories. So first of all, it's a difficult question what to do with such ruins. The second question is how much we have to invest to protect it and to do something about that. And because of that, it's very often rejected because it's just a ruin. People don't treat it as a cultural heritage. They treat it as something ugly and dirty, breaking the image of a city. And some nice example of the historical market square without advertisements. And also, again, we have hell where there are no those stands. We can see the architecture. How I was so surprised when I discovered that this architecture is so nice there, but in the touristic season I couldn't discover it because it was all covered with the souvenir shops and those tents. And some good example of urban regeneration in Bydgoszcz, there was the old marina, which was in very bad condition. They introduced some innovations there, but it has something in common with how it was designed at the beginning, and the example of half-timbered wall buildings in different parts of Poland. So it's not so bad about the cultural heritage, but it's also not so obvious. So I prepared some questions to discuss, but maybe it's better if you will ask me question and it's not me because there is so many of you, so it will be hard to organize the discussion. So maybe if you have any questions, please ask.